All right, let's get this started. Yeah, I didn't exactly have a good. I was basically trying to figure out which one I would do next because I kind of did want to do some of the villains as well, but I didn't know what order I wanted to do them in, so I'm just going to kind of go in a random order. Um, I knew at least of the villains I wanted to do the three main ones from Z, which is Frieza, Cell, and Boo, and I figured Cell would be the easiest because he's the one that's had the least appearances. I guess canonically, I know he's in some of the filler in Z. So let me get us started by adapting the rating system and all that. All right, we're ready to roll. So I would say we probably should begin this with the conceptual stuff because a lot of people, as I've discovered, generally don't know about how certain characters come to fruition. So originally, 19 and 20 were supposed to be the main villains of the Android arc, and Toriyama's editor didn't like those two because he thought it was a clown and an old man, which is kind of what they were. And in response, Toriyama created 17 and 18, which were also disliked by the editor. Well, not disliked, but they were considered to be brats, which caused for our favorite Bugman to get invented. It's really weird because, by all accounts, there hasn't been another arc where there was an intended villain, and then while it was going on, the editor or some higher up from Toriyama decided to tell him to screw whoever the main villain was or to replace them with someone else. So it's a pretty unique um, position that Cell's in where he's the unintentional main villain. And it makes sense in a bit of a bizarre way because if you compare how early Frieza shows up in his arc and how early Boo shows up in his arc, or at least the foreshadowing that's going on, Cell does make the most out of nowhere appearance of the three of them. So, that's always something I think about when I rewatch this that part of the series because that was something I didn't know about until maybe a couple of years ago. And it really makes a lot of sense when you consider how they introduced 19 and 20 and um, 20 is able to just effortlessly take out Yamcha, which again isn't that big of a milestone, but they're shown to be these intimidating antagonists. And right around the time where you've got 19 being able to at least be on par with a sickened Goku, uh, you have likely the editorial decisions coming into fruition where you basically have the editor say, "Hey, I don't like these two." So then when you see 19 get killed right after being introduced, and then 20 is basically just there to introduce the antagonists that are going to be the main villains for the next quarter of the arc, it makes a lot of sense when you consider that behind the scenes information. I mean, they fall off ridiculously fast. I think the only other character in Z that probably has as much of a just heightened introduction to where they just collapse entirely is probably Deborah. But in the case of Deborah, he was never intended to be the main villain. So his is just Toriyama making a character and doing nothing with him, which is pretty unfortunate because he has a cool design in my opinion. But whatever. So Cell shows up, has a really good fight with Piccolo, and it's basically the one of the last two hurrahs of Piccolo actually being able to seriously be considered the one who's going to take out the main villain. And it was really disappointing. Who are the? Um, It's a really good. That's a good question. They have a lot of antagonists. I think what it is that when the series starts, so the East Blue arc, a lot of the antagonists are just kind of meh. But when you start getting the Arlong and Crocodile, um, I'd say between Crocodile, Sakazuki, and Blackbeard, those are the three best villains. Because Sakazuki is literally there's only ever been one character in the entire series that's been able to really do any damage to him, and it's a really interesting dynamic where you got the antagonist as the good guy from in terms of his position, because pirates are seen as evil for the most part, even though we know Luffy isn't, and the Straw Hats are not. So I'd say he's probably my favorite villain out of the whole series. That's why I'm get so annoyed that they won't use him after Marineford. No, but we get this really good fight between Piccolo and Cell, and it's during that fight we're introduced to Cell's ability to absorb, not well, yeah, to absorb, and also his um, use of attacks that other characters use. And I guess there are a lot of people who try to say that the Cell arc was meant to be the conclusion of the series. And of any antagonist, I have to say he probably fits that position the best because the final villain for the Z Fighters is someone who is literally all of them combined. I think it's the perfect last antagonist. So I know people will say it's been debunked and that this was never planned on being the ending, but I can get where people get that position from, especially when you consider Cell's relationship to the core cast. But yeah, he gets away and resurfaces when 17 and Piccolo are fighting, which is considered by many people to be one of the best fights of the entire series, including myself. At least of Z anyway. I know that people rank it up very highly. Um, but he's much stronger because of all the different people he's absorbed, and that's something we never really get an explanation for because the series never goes into what exactly, in terms of power, does Cell gain from absorbing a bunch of people. Is it 1,000 people equals a million, power level points or something? Like I said, power scaling is really he's of any of the main villains, he's definitely the one that kind of starts to break the power scaling because when the Cell Juniors come out at the Cell games, and Yamcha and Tien are able to take out one of them, and they're supposed to be weaker than Future Trunks and Vegeta, who are about on par with the Cell Juniors, but still getting beat up. That's how you know power levels don't matter. That's why every time people try to do the power scale, like I don't even watch those videos anymore because they're just a stupid number that people like to believe when we know that the way this series is written, characters are as strong as the writer wants them to be. Look at what happened with 17 and Super. He went from being weaker than Cell's first form. Granted, it was after Cell absorbed a whole bunch of people, to being able to fight Super Saiyan Blue and Jiren and those. Whatever, we can get into Super later. Um, but yeah, he gets his second form, which when I was little used to be my favorite one because I like the lips and it's like a bulkier version of the first form. Although I will admit the first form is definitely the most disturbing one to me in terms of appearance because of the beak mouth and those kind of like raptor type eyes. So I do get where people don't like the second one as much as the first one or the last one, but it was the one I liked a lot when I was younger because of it looking like this combination. It was like the best of both worlds, sort of, where he's kind of got a more mainstream appearance, but he still has his tail and can absorb people. But he just doesn't use it as much anymore because he's considering himself to be much stronger than everybody else, which was kind of true at the time. But I just really like that form, and Toriyama liked the form as well. It was his favorite too, and it only was around for a short time because his editor butted in again and said, "Hey, that he looks stupid. Make him transform again already." um, so the form only lasts between when he absorbs 18 to, excuse me, when he absorbs 17, and then we have that little small period where 18 and 16 are hiding on the island. Vegeta shows up with all of his new power, screws everything up, lets Cell absorb 18. Future Trunks, for whatever reason, cannot defeat his dad and Cell. And then we get that final form. Ruben said Cell Art Gohan should travel to the future and beat up Great Saiyan Man Gohan. I mean, I guess. That was actually something that we were when the Goku Black arc initially came out. There were people who said it would have been way more interesting if Zamasu had some kind of like vendetta against Future Trunks, and he got Gohan's old, like deceased body or revived the body and basically made himself look like future Gohan as this to traumatize him. I thought that Future Trunks was holding back because he didn't want to embarrass Daddy. Well, remember we found out that even though he was his big buff form he ends up using against Cell is stronger than the one that excuse me than the one that Vegeta had when he was beating up Cell in his second form. It still might not have been able to beat Vegeta because Vegeta, even in being apparently weaker, is still stronger, or rather, is still faster. So even if Future Trunks was stronger with that form, it still wouldn't be. It might not be enough to beat Vegeta because it's slower. I mean, you saw DBZ Abridged. You saw Cell admit I was just letting you hit me, trying to have some fun. Now, my favorite scene with second form Cell is from the show where 18 is trying to hit him and he's ducking and dodging. And they have, man, the animators know what the hell they're doing. They have his tail visible while he's dodging her attacks, but then they also want you to believe that it's slowly creeping behind her. I did like him using the solar flare because it connects him back to TN, where TN was the one that basically. Oh, and also Cell's probably the only reason anybody remembers TN in Z at all because of the move that TN used to stall him. So only thing he does the entire show that's actually remotely useful, which is really frustrating because I really like that character. Um, so yeah, I like that setup for him getting his third form where he uses a move from TN, the same person who made it to where he couldn't get 18 as fast as he would like, now has a move that he's using that will help him get her. I like that. It's a nice little. I don't know if Toriyama did that on purpose, but it's this great bit of irony. But yeah, we get the final form, and it's considered iconic and wonderful and all that. Um, and it's funny because there are people who mention that Cell's character gets probably 10 times more boring because you could always infer that he was only doing the things he was doing, absorbing all these people, trying to get as powerful as he could so that he could get his perfect form or be able to fight, um, at some strong enough level to where he could get his perfect form. And that after he gets his perfect form, him wanting to destroy the earth just kind of comes out of left field, or it doesn't really add up with the rest of his character because they try to make him a foil to Goku where, oh, I love to fight and I love to train. And then instead of him, what's a good word for it? Instead of him just training and becoming stronger, they have to make sure he's evil and irredeemable so he can be murdered and we can have a satisfying conclusion. Tien would have been useful fighting Nappa if the show didn't just give Saiyans unhinged advantages over everyone else. Well, remember, Nappa was just there to make all the rest of the cast look like trash. So when Goku showed up, he could look cooler. That's the craziest thing in the world. For the Saiyan arc, they really made everyone that's not Gohan or Krillin is just there to stall. Like anyone that's not those two or Piccolo, because Piccolo did prove to be useful in that fight, because it was him that destroyed the moon when Gohan transformed into a great ape right after their training started. And that initially was why Vegeta couldn't transform until he made a moon and drew it up. That would have been a great twist if Piccolo ended up saving the day even while he was dead. No, Vegeta discarded Nappa. Goku beat him up, but Vegeta killed him. It's just like with the that's almost that was the thing, running gag for the first two arcs of Z. Remember in the Frieza arc where Goku beats up Raccoon and Birder, and then Vegeta kills them while they're unconscious. And then you had someone who was dumb enough to come in here talking about Vegeta was bodying the Ginyu Force, even though he only beat one of them in a fair fight, which was Jace. And the other one, Goldo, he only beat because he caught him off guard. That's why I think it's so funny. Like a lot of people play revisionist history with the show. It's comedic. Yeah, I don't think Cell does anything at all between the fight with Future Trunks, which is basically just an excuse to make Trunks look useful because, and someone brought this up before, Trunks only was ever useful when he defeated Frieza when he came to Earth, and after that, anytime he fights, it's just you might as well be having Krillin or someone else fight. It has the same effect where he can't defeat 17 and 18, he can't defeat Vegeta, and then he can't defeat Cell. Even when it's just this one on one, like I never thought about that until someone brought it up. Out of the what five fights that Trunks has during the Cell arc, he only had like wins one of them. I didn't realize how much Toriyama hates that character until someone mentioned that. At least until Nappa got resurrected by the Dragon Balls and then changed his identity to Vic. Oh. Yeah, Nappa was just there to make the rest of the cast look horrible. Unfortunately, again, in a series where you can bring people back, you always could do more with his character. But I don't see Toriyama ever wising up to that. But they did bring 17 back after basically doing nothing with him for an entire show, so entire two shows. So anything's possible. Yeah, going back to what I was saying. So they give Cell and Trunks this fight that kind of it's cool looking, but it doesn't actually serve anything to the narrative. Like it feels kind of weird because one of the criticisms I have toward Toriyama as a writer is he does this thing where characters start to act in ways that are not consistent with how they've acted before for the sake of advancing the plot. So we saw Cell, and I'm sure you remember this, Ruben. Um, every time Cell had a chance to kill somebody, he would do it. He tried to kill Piccolo. He tried to kill Tien. He obviously, killed Future Trunks, and then he also was trying to kill Vegeta before Gohan saved him. So it was really weird when after he's beaten down Trunks, or has basically survived his supposed onslaught and can take him out whenever he wants. He's like, no, I'm gonna let you survive and train for another week or so. I'm gonna let you just train. I'm gonna let you off the hook because he obviously didn't let him off so that he could tell the other Z fighters, because if that actually mattered to him, he wouldn't have gone on TV and announced the Cell games. And I was thinking maybe that was the somebody tried to argue that was his personality was changed by each form. They were trying to say that his personality was changed by each form, but if that's true, why did he still want to, like, he still kept wanting to kill everybody else except for that one instance. So that was Toriyama. That's why I said a lot of people try to pretend when you criticize Super and GT and the rest of the stuff after Z that you must think Z is perfect. I said no, I've known of it since I guess my nostalgic days, but I can still go back and admit where pieces of the plot, don't really add up that much. Like I remember one of the criticisms I have of the Future Trunks arc, which is that Goku Black creates himself, where he's the fusion of Zamasu with Goku's body, but Goku only meets Zamasu when he's looking for Goku Black. This like time loop thing. It was the same thing with Cell, where Trunks goes back over the androids, and then Cell from another timeline comes back because of what Trunks did. It's the same thing. That time loop crap. I don't know why they made Goku Black just Zamasu with a different, but that was really stupid. But yeah, we get the Cell games. We get this really, in my opinion, underrated fight between Goku and Cell. You have people to this day who say Goku could have won if he had just kept fighting. Oh yeah, by the way, Cell's final form probably has the coolest introduction of any form besides maybe Frieza's final form or his fourth form, the skinny one where Trunks and I should just say Future Trunks and Krillin are punching him, and then after Krillin throws a Destructo Disc at his neck and it doesn't do anything, Cell just knocks him, or basically almost kills him with one kick. Jesus Christ! Like I remember watching that when I was little. Just like they don't have villains with introductions like that anymore, where they just take somebody out in one hit or one blow. I think the only other instance in Z where we got that was probably when Goku fought Raccoon. Him and Broly only lost because the good guys had to always have to win. Well, the good guys didn't really win against Zamasu. Remember, the whole timeline got blown up instead by Zeno. Zeno rage quitted the timeline. Yeah, but no, I agree that he was pretty unbeatable. Because I remember at the tournament, that Piccolo couldn't do anything against me. That Vegeta couldn't do anything. Trunks. It was literally just Goku and Gohan. And Goku actually was doing very credible damage to Cell because when he gave him the sensu bean back, you could see that Cell was all withered and whatnot. That's why a lot of people to this day speculate that Goku could have won if he got a sensu bean and then kept fighting Cell, which I'm not sure about, because even if he was able to, I guess, wear him down, you have to factor in that Cell can regenerate. So when Goku blew off his head and Cell just pops it back out, we don't, like, it could have gone on longer. It could have gone either way in my view. Yeah, that fight was really good. Like, I'm sick of Goku at this point in the series because they've basically been shoving everyone else to the back burner to give him cool stuff. But that was actually a really good fight. It's right up there with Goku versus King Piccolo, which has a much better conclusion because he's actually the one that wins that fight. And it was built around like a whole. Really, I'd say probably the last arc of a villain getting proper build up to fight the good guys was the Cell arc. Um, because there's never really any hype for Boo to fight Goku and Vegeta at all. Because that arc tries to pretend, oh, it's going to be Gotenks or it's going to be Gohan. Whereas with Cell, he's always like, bring me Goku. Where is Goku? He calls him the legendary Goku. Like, after that, we don't really get antagonists being ready to fight him, are really looking forward to fighting him. It's kind of just a thing where they stumble across each other. It was that way in pretty much everything from GT. Um, and Super as well. Because in Super, he's treated like nobody knows who he is. This complete reboot of his standing within the world. I guess the universes. But yeah, let me. I guess for this, what always pisses me off about the Gohan versus Cell stuff is that they try to pretend that Gohan's a pacifist, or that he's this character who doesn't like to fight, or that won't fight. But then at every instance in the show before that point or series, we always saw him willing to fight. Like he tried to fight Raditz, he fought Nappa, Vegeta. the Ginyu Force, Frieza. But now we're supposed to believe, as he, literally having to save his home planet, their last hope, he just now doesn't like to fight. I even mentioned this during the Gohan stream we did, that is my uh, one of my three favorite characters. But they really, Toriyama really was reaching with that one, because that characterization does not match up with what we had seen from him in prior parts of the series. And then he's going to transform, not because Krillin or Piccolo or somebody else we've seen him bond with for several arcs is getting beat up by these little demonic versions of Cell. No, he's going to get sad because an android he might have spoken to maybe once or twice in the past got his head crushed in. And I'm saying that as someone that likes 16. He was a really, we don't really get, I guess what I like about him is he's entirely robotic, but he feels kind of different from the other androids in that he wants to kill Goku, but he's not evil at all. Like it's in his programming. And I always thought that was interesting. But yeah, they waste his character. We never get to see 16 again. Thanks, you can thank Cell for that. And that leads to the transformation that everybody loves to say is so great and wonderful and terrific and fantastic. And Toriyama has more forced writing where he basically makes Vegeta now suddenly start to care about Trunks after Trunks gets murdered by Cell, because we can't just have Gohan turn Super Saiyan 2, kill Cell, end of arc. We have to have a big dramatic, oh my god, who's gonna win, nail biter fight. So they use Vegeta's non-existent before today emotions to make him get pissed off enough to do something so stupid as challenge someone that he's much weaker than, and then have Gohan try to shield him. And again, it's not about not liking the end result. All right, I'll see you later, Ruben. It's not about not liking the end result. It's just when you have a character that you follow for an entire series or season or however long, and you know for fact that they don't act that way, it's kind of hard to believe they just, oh, now magically have shifted to being so concerned about this son that they treated like garbage before. So yeah, they have him get handicapped, referring to Gohan, and then we have the beam struggle, which I would say was pretty cool. I really like the father son Kamehameha, but again, it's just not it's not a conclusion that Toriyama really earned, because it's him trying to protect someone that did something reckless, a character that he did admittedly, referring to Gohan, save Vegeta during the Frieza arc. But other than that, it was kind of just, we're supposed to believe he's gonna be that injured from one blast to the shoulder, and that he's not fast enough to dodge it or block it or do something to it. Because remember, in Dragon Ball, they have a universal power system where you basically gain speed in addition to strength. So we're supposed to believe that he wasn't able to do anything to halt that blast from hurting him. We're just supposed to think that makes sense. So yeah, they have the beam struggle. Vegeta gets to have his one instance of actually taking out the main villain, and it's probably, unfortunately, the last time we're going to see him do that. There are people who are hoping that he beats Moro. I don't think so. It was a really nice fight, but unfortunately, a lot of people are basically getting their hopes up for nothing. Because if there's one show that likes to let people down, it's Dragon Ball. Give me a second. All right, let's resume. So after Cell gets destroyed, that's the last we see of him in the manga. In the rest of Z, he does make some filler appearances. We have the his second appearance, or rather his first appearance after the Cell arc in the show is when Pycon goes to fight Cell, Frieza, and the Ginyu Force in Hell with Goku, and Cell's like, "I'm the one who killed him," in reference to him beating Goku or taking him out. Um, and he gets effortlessly taken down by Pycon, which I guess is supposed to hype us for how much stronger Pycon is supposed to be from Goku. And we also see him in Hell during the Goku versus Kid Buu fight, where he's trying to figure out why Goku would quit fighting him, but then want to still fight Kid Buu. It's nice little supplemental stuff to kind of. That's the kind of filler I like because it references earlier parts of the show without without substituting the characterization of people or characters that we haven't seen since then. Kind of like the early launch filler from Z, where all she does is follow behind Tien, and that was something that's consistent with what we know about her from the manga. So I liked it, and that does set the precedent of making Cell and Frieza this team, because and it would make a lot of sense because Cell has parts of Frieza in him, so they would likely have a team up or a friendship or a I guess partnership after being around each other for years from them both being deceased. Um, but yeah, he was I think, a very solid character when he had his first and second form. Even though his third form is the most iconic one, I think his actual character does suffer from it because they don't let him have the same kind of one goal of absorbing someone, and they basically turn him into a nice foil to Goku, but make him evil, which doesn't really make much sense with what we knew about his character beforehand. So it's really unfortunately kind of just a thing where you have to take some stuff and leave out the other parts. And I'd say his character was much stronger when he just had his first two forms. That's why I think if because he wasn't originally introduced to be able to transform, according to what we know about the behind the scenes production of the Cell arc. So I do wonder what would have happened if Cell had not been allowed to transform, as Toriyama originally intended. If he had just been this evil person who um, was trying to, I guess, take out Jiro's grudges against Goku, like basically a version of 16 without a conscience, which I guess theoretically would have made him similar to how his perfect form ultimately turned out, minus wanting to fight. So it's just another one of those things where we're never going to know for sure because Toriyama doesn't really go in depth about a lot of parts of his show, unfortunately. So that sucks. But yeah, out of GT, they only use Cell during the Super 17 arc, where he meets Goku in Hell, and him and Frieza are basically mocking him for being stuck in the circumstance that he's in. Uh, and this is what I was talking about when I said they tend to treat major villains kind of like nothing after their arc. You've seen this pretty much with every villain except for Boo, and with Boo they just put him to sleep, which is really annoying. But with Cell and Frieza, they have the two of them together. They're still stronger than probably most of the people on Earth. And instead of having them go to Earth and destroy a bunch of stuff and then have some cool fight with one of the protagonists that's on Earth, whether that's Goten, Gohan, Piccolo, whoever, all we get to see them do is just sit in hell and mock someone who's much, much stronger than them, who we know is not going to have a problem taking them out. So I guess the only real cool thing that comes out of seeing Cell again is seeing Cell again during GT. They did have that one little scene where he absorbs Goku and he's unbelievably stronger, but it still was kind of lame because it's not going to actually stick. But that would have been pretty cool if we had maybe like an arc after if some other character beat Super 17 and then the next arc was them having to figure out how to get Goku out of Cell. Because if you remember when Cell absorbs someone, they stay in their entirety inside that person. So they would have literally been trying to figure out how to take Goku out. Like how does Goku get out? How's he gonna win? So that would have been way cooler than what we actually got, which was just a little itty bitty scene of the main protagonist being stuck inside of a old villain that we know isn't going to be able to ever measure up in power to any But yeah, I was gonna say that for the rest of GT, they could have done that story, but they decided not to. They aborted it. And then with Super, he's only showing up in cameos where he basically, um, Jesus Christ. All right, let's try this one more time, guys. So yeah, with Super, they just have him appear in cameos. They have him appear as a, I guess, projection in the forest when Goku and Krillin go over there. And then in the first chapter of the manga, they have him appear as one of the villains that Goku's defeated in the past, who they're just trying to make, I guess, for nostalgic purposes, show up again. I've seen some people who have stated that they wish he would have come back for the Tournament of Power because he probably still was stronger than most of the people who actually showed up, like Roshi and Krillin and Tien. Um, there was another person who recommended that they could have gone to, because he's presumably in hell for all we know. They could have gone to hell and picked him up along with Frieza, but decided not to. And it would have been really cool to see all three of the major villains from Z as members of the Universe 17 for the Tournament of Power. But they, as you remember, switched out Boo for Frieza. So we basically got tricked. But yeah, it would have been nice because I would have loved to have seen him fight Hit. I would have loved to have seen him fight Jiren. And it would have been even more amazing if they found a way to make him go back to his second form, and then he could have absorbed someone at the tournament and gained their power. That's why Cell's just really not used properly because that absorption part of his character doesn't really get implemented ever. Like after he gets his perfect form, even when he reverts back to his second one during the Cell games, they don't let him absorb anyone. They don't let him use his tail. It's like it's not even there. Like he forgot how to absorb after he got to his third form. And then they put this stupid thing where I was able to get to my uh, third form again without absorbing the androids again because of my genetic structures. Man, that's just a stupid excuse to get him to stay in that form and not let him go around absorbing people again. You say hello to Mark. Now, every major villain before Super came out, I used to have this joke that every major villain after Frieza just relies on absorption and possession and all this stuff where they're too lazy to come up with their own moves and ideas, so they try to make them who's who's Stree. I don't know who Stree is. Yeah, you guys are making up all these new characters. No, but it would have been really nice to see Cell absorb someone again, or at least get a decent fight. Because I was making mention of that he's the out of any of the main villains from Z, they've used him the least. They've pretended he doesn't exist pretty much since Z ended, or at least since the Cell arc ended. It sucks because they just keep bringing back Frieza. They brought Frieza back in the Cell arc. They brought him back for Resurrection F. They brought him back for Tournament of Power. He's in the Moro arc. Like they keep bringing this damn guy back, but then with Cell, they just pretend like he's not around. I think Super Saiyan 2 Gohan was, and that's why Toriyama was lazy and said, I got to make sure that this is still somewhat competitive. So let me cripple him by having him, for some reason, be too slow to both save Vegeta and block that blast from Cell. Because again, if he, we know in this series that when people get stronger, they're also faster. So it doesn't make sense to me that he couldn't block that beam really quickly with his other hand. It was just lazy writing by Toriyama. Ah, so many interruptions. This is the chaotic stream where all the weird stuff is going on. Hey, Mark, I'm sorry, and for anyone else that sees this, I'm very sorry. That's why I say I wish I lived alone. I really do. I would give nothing more than to just not have to put up with a lot of the stuff that's over here. And I even gave a dialect about how when you apply for, was that 98 positions and you hear nothing back over and over again, and then you get blamed for it. Like Mark, yesterday on my stream, I was talking about. I agree. I find it funny that some people think Cell's stronger. Oh no, Toriyama basically proved that by crippling Gohan because we don't get to see outright a 100% Super Saiyan 2 Gohan fight Super Perfect Cell. And one of the reasons for that is because we know Gohan would whoop Cell. Like that little boost he got from coming back still wasn't enough to actually make him more powerful than Gohan was before he got handicapped. But yeah, Mark, I was gonna tell you, I was doing this stream yesterday, and I was like, I applied to 31 pizza, not Pizza Huts, 7-Elevens, and I only ever heard back from two of them. And this dude was like, "Why are you so obsessed with trying to work there?" And I'm like, dude, the whole point of me mentioning the 31 that I applied to is to make the point that it's ridiculous that such a small number out of that 31 said anything back. And it's like, how do you not get that general point? Like that point of you apply to this many places and so few of them say anything back. But so I said about people online, they one thing goes in one ear, out the other. They don't even care. They just say stuff, just whatever. But yeah, you've had people who say they want Resurrection C, and I don't know how that's going to work because actually, no, I take that back because I floated the idea of Cell coming back after Resurrection F, basically, which cemented in my mind that we were going to get recurring villains in Dragon Ball at this point. And this guy was like, I don't know who would bring Cell back. It's like, well, you could have Android 21 use the Dragon Balls to resurrect him. He's only died once. And then the person's response was to say, Android 21 isn't canon. And I'm like, well, hell, Broly wasn't canon, and they brought him back. Like, I guess what I think is so crazy is it's disturbing to know that people are fans of this franchise, and they try to act as if they have no imagination or that we haven't had certain strings pulled for certain things to occur. Because I guarantee you, before Resurrection F came back, or rather came out, no one would have thought someone was going to bring back Frieza. Well, Austin, if he doesn't like drawing the spots, there's a very simple solution. Give him a form that doesn't have any. That's it. That's all. Or get somebody else to draw him. He could draw the body and then somebody else could color it. And they have that where they have people who do the pencils and then somebody else does the inking. So it's a very simple solution. But no, I have read that before, that Toriyama found it tedious to keep putting the spots on him when all he has to do is just have someone else color or give him a form without spots. And you're going to give him a golden form. Okay, exactly. Especially during this lockdown, it's hard to get employment. Well, that was another thing I mentioned, Mark, that people are going to say the virus is what caused all these places to not hire. It's like, no. They were doing that in December, in January, in February, and for the part of March before this thing started. But I do agree it's worse now because of this. Broly versus Super Perfect Cell would be a great battle. Yeah, and that's the thing. People are like, I don't think Cell would be strong enough to fight Broly. I'm like, well, hell, we didn't think Frieza would be strong enough to fight Super Saiyan God Goku, and he is. It's like all they have to do is say that Cell has been training in hell, which is what they said for Frieza, and that he's unlocked some new transformation, which is, that's their go-to whenever they want a character to be stronger, to give him a new form. That'll be a very easy way to explain, and that's actually a much better explanation than for 17, because I always say that if characters are in hell, they're likely in hell with other villains, and it was supposed to be this thing that if you fight stronger opponents, you get stronger. So imagine like we get some scene of Cell versus Deborah, because they said Cell and Deborah are at the same level of strength, or that Deborah was about the same level of strength as Cell when he died. That would be so cool. The Demon King versus this man-made monstrosity that wants to destroy Earth. Oh, that's another wasted opportunity. We never got to see outside of games Cell interact with Android 20. We never see it. How cool would it have been to see Android 20 say to Cell, "Hey, you've reached your perfect form, but how come you haven't killed Goku? What's the deal? How come he's still alive? Why is he still breathing?" We never got it, except for video games, which I guess I'll give them credit for doing that, but it's still kind of lame that they introduced this character that hates Goku and they kill him off, and then we know that people interact in the other world, or in heaven and hell, or the series version of heaven and hell, and we never get any filler with them interacting. We just nothing. Hell, we've seen Cell interact more with the Ginyu Force than with his own creator. There are so many wasted character interactions in Dragon Ball. That's really insane. Just like I don't think we ever see Cell interact with Piccolo after he gets into his second form. And admittedly, that does have to do with the fact that Piccolo was on the lookout the whole time. Cell was in his second form. But even at the Cell games, he doesn't say anything to him, just nothing. No, the Cell games, people like tournament arcs for whatever reason. One of the downsides for me for all tournament arcs, this includes the ones even in the original series, is that they take characters who can't fight and they kind of make them useless. Like they make them not able to do anything that really contributes to the story, because it's just these two people fighting each other and everybody else just a commentator. One of the rare examples of this was during the Tien arc, where Shao Tzu was helping Tien with his psychic powers until Tien told him to stop against Goku. But yeah, that's one of the main reasons I don't really like tournament arcs. They don't let the rest of the cast really do much. What's another good matchup? We Cell versus Jiren would have been cool. Um, Cell versus Hit would be cool. There's all kind of fights we could have had. Cell versus adult Gohan, which some people have actually made in cartoon form. Yeah, he's easily one of the best antagonists in the series, which I guess isn't saying much, considering some of the villains we've gotten since Z. But you know, facts. I don't know why everybody gets shafted for Goku and Vegeta. Well, Austin, what happened was that when GT was airing, uh, they tried to make it to where everybody got shafted for Goku, and there was backlash. So that's why toward the end of GT, you start seeing Vegeta do a little bit more stuff. He gets to get Super Saiyan 4, and they try to use him a little bit more than they did before because of that backlash. But the reason is no one's giving them backlash for not using other characters specifically. So if enough people got pissed that Piccolo wasn't showing up anymore, they start using him, which they kind of are doing because they did let him be in the Broly movie, and they have given him a couple of fights in the Moro arc. So we might be getting a little bit of that at this point. Like people always say, if you're not a Saiyan, they ignore you. Well, characters that aren't Saiyans that are introduced as powerful, they still find a way to treat them like trash. I want to see Tien do something. Yeah, Tien he's in the same camp with Piccolo. They have all these different techniques and powers, and they just kind of treat him, like nothing. I think Toriyama, he actually, and you can go look this up if you don't believe me. He said on 2 different occasions that Piccolo was his favorite character, and another occasion he said Tien was his favorite character. And I'm very shocked. I think he was trolling us the way he treats those two. It's really ridiculous. Yeah, they don't really get much stuff to do anymore. Like even the turn of power, even if they gave Piccolo a couple of fights, it's still just like this is good because everything else was so awful leading up to that. Yeah, that's a really disappointing thing. No, Cell's the only main villain from Z that we don't get to see in the flesh during Super, because Boo technically counts all as one entity, and Frieza gets to have two arcs of being a main character. It's just not right. I just realized that they brought Frieza back 4 times. I think the only material that's used Cell well outside of the everything since the Cell arc has probably been Fighters, because he is in the plot of that. He's not. They don't really let him be like the main focus or anything, which is cool because 21's supposed to be the main villain of that. But they do use him for more than just a cameo, and he actually contributes to the story. So outside of that, they just give him the shaft over and over, which is really a disappointment. Like, he's got my favorite design of any of the villains from Z. He's got probably I think the best gimmick of being the Z fighters all rolled into one. Like, oh, he's going to use Goku's move, and he's going to use Vegeta's move. Fighters gave Cell some good dialogue. Yeah. So I said it's the only thing after the Cell arc that's really used him in an effective way. Like, even if he wasn't going to be the main villain of that, I want them to do something with him, is my point. Because really, outside of the series, the only thing that's tried to give him something to do are the games. I remember they had this one level in Budokai Tenkaichi where he fights Super 17 to determine who's the best android. It's sad when the English developers of this game have more imagination than the people writing the actual show. Oh, and the other thing I like about Cell is that he's because he's part of the androids. Because I always said that one of the things I like about the androids is that they're embedded in the series, because they're spin-offs from the Red Ribbon Army. Jiro used to work for them, even though he didn't show up during that arc. It ties back into something earlier in the show, whereas Boo just comes out of nowhere. And Frieza is foreshadowed, or at least I guess the point is that I like him being part of the Red Ribbon stuff because it all feels connected. Because a lot of stuff I don't like about one of the reasons I don't like Super as a series is that a lot of the arcs are just kind of stuff that happens after each other. They don't really build on anything, except for the 2 tournaments, because they're directly alluded to. The first one ties into the second one, and Frieza coming back for the Tournament of Power, because it makes the Resurrection F arc actually have some water. But they still didn't foreshadow it at all. So yeah, even though Frieza's the more recurring villain, and I'll get to talking about him soon, Cell is the one I actually really like. And it's been a shame that they won't bring him back in any capacity other than, some, if it's a flashback or some illusion or some other non-real type of way. But I guess you could say that about a lot of the antagonists. I think he's particularly special because out of the 3 main villains from Z, he was the only one that we actually knew liked to train. And it kind of gave Frieza what he does. See, because if they wanted Frieza to be in character, they could have just had him get resurrected with the Dragon Balls and then wish for a new form. Because it just didn't make it wasn't in Frieza's character to train. So if they wanted to keep with his character, they could have just had him wish to be stronger. Who's the better antagonist? Well, I think it's Cell, because he's literally all of the heroes put together. And he is similar to Goku in that he likes to train, likes to have a good fight, and is just evil. And I think they really could have done, if we're going to have recurring villains, he's ideally, of any of the ones from Z, the one I'd like to see get used at least one more time. Like, they even brought Broly back. I love how there were people who were, when they were trying to, I guess, go against me wanting Cell back, they said, "Oh, but uh, Dragon Ball can't have recurring villains." This was about, I think, 3 years ago. So this is after Resurrection F came out, and this is before Frieza got brought back for the tournament, and it's before the Broly movie was revealed to be the 4th Broly film. So I'm getting like Mark, that's why I was saying that Dragon Ball fans are like talking to the Twilight Zone because they're you're being told by these people we don't need to bring back or have recurring villains, while all the franchise seems to do is bring back and reuse villains. Like even before Frieza, who's been back at least 3 times, we had what's his name, Mercenary Tao, show up again at the World Tournament after supposedly dying. We had Emperor Pilaf appear in like what 3 or 4 different arcs. I mean, I don't really see what the problem is if you use a villain twice, as long as there's a new spin on it. So if they brought back Cell and all he wants to do is have a stupid tournament again, I would have a problem with that. But if they brought him back and used him to torment Gohan and go, oh, you're so weak now, and when I was around, you used to train, and now I can destroy the world and whatnot, it would be a lot more interesting. Oh, and it would also be kind of cool to see him in his perfect form fight 17 and 18 because since he doesn't need them inside of him, he can just do whatever he wants. Like he doesn't have to worry about, you know, keeping them alive or whatever. Which is another thing they really didn't expand on with Cell's character outside of the manga. If you remember when Future Trunks is confronted by Future Cell, the Cell from his timeline, you do see Cell briefly get panicked when he realizes that 17 and 18 are now dead or are, not around, because that's him realizing his dream of getting his perfect form is never going to come to pass. They never really do that with the main version of Cell, which is kind of disappointing. But it would be nice if, let's say, they brought him back and his dream is to fight Gohan again because that's the person who killed him, and then he finds out that Gohan's dead or off planet or something happened to him, and he'd be horrified by that. Again, it's just seeing a different side of that character would be decent. Yeah, there's a lot of things they can do with him, Austin. That's why I said that he makes the most sense for me if they want to use a villain again, because it's not unreasonable to think that he was training in hell and that he wants to test himself against the same group of people who killed him before. That's why I said that they tried to basically turn Frieza into him a little bit. No, it's totally in Frieza's character to use the Dragon Balls to get stronger. Because if you remember, Frieza was the last villain from the manga to seek the Dragon Balls. Cell wanted nothing to do with them, or rather, I guess, didn't know they existed, and Boo didn't care either. So every villain between Frieza and Zamasu couldn't care less about the Dragon Balls. Really, but they've just been a thing that none of the antagonists care about. But yeah, it's sad that they make such a cool villain and they don't use him, but they want to keep reusing Frieza over and over. And that's crazy. I realize he's the only villain out of any of the ones from out of the, I guess, 4 major villains from Z who doesn't appear in Super outside of flashbacks or illusions. And I don't even think actually gets mentioned. I take that back. He does get mentioned by Future Trunks when he shows up during his time. Oh, can't Frieza train for another 4 months and be angel level? Yeah, that's what I thought was stupid. Why did they specify 4 months? Why couldn't they just say he's been training for 2 or 3 years? Because the massive power creep he has in that little span of time, he should be an angel. But that's why I said that the series doesn't think about things like that. Like, it wants you to believe, oh, imagine how strong Frieza would be if he trained another 4 months. But just like Austin said, he would be angel level. They don't think about that. They just want you to go, wow, in 4 months he got this strong. No, like I said, if they were truly using Frieza the way he was depicted in the Frieza arc, they would have just had him wish that he was as strong as Goku is. And that could have been the whole premise of that movie. Them trying to defeat an evil version of Goku's, at least, strength. No, so I guess out of the missed opportunities for Cell, we have him not interacting with Android 20. We have him not interacting with 17 and 18. What else? not meeting adult Gohan. There's a lot of stuff they can do with him. And somebody was saying they'll bring him back eventually. It's like, don't count on it, because I was of the opinion that the Tournament of Power wasn't going to be the last arc of Super until it was revealed. I want to say toward the end that was the end of the series, because you had people who were like, "This tournament is not the last arc of the show," and then it was, and then we got this damn movie. And before we found out it was Broly, they were just like, "Oh, there's going to be this new antagonist," and we already knew it was a human-looking character. I was like, "Oh, great, more Saiyans." Well, I was saying before, Austin, that one of the things that kind of is annoying is you can tell these people like it when Toriyama actually cared about writing a good story, he wrote good stories. I said that in all of the original series with Dragon Ball, so before Z, the only plot point of his that I thought was lazy and horrible writing was when he had Goku get stronger from drinking some water. I thought that was dumb, but everything else, I was like, that was a. If I could rank the original series, I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. It's only when he gets to Z, and especially when he gets to the Boo arc, that it just declines like crazy. And then I told you that the fans do this thing where instead of being receptive to the criticism of this show, they try to say you're either being nostalgic or you're mad because your favorite character isn't being used. And I think those are really lazy ways to deflect from what are legitimate grievances with the show. Like I think a series, if it's going to bring back villains, it wouldn't hurt to use a villain that actually could be brought back and have something new done with them. Like they used Frieza so well during the Tournament of Power, and I can admit that even in initially not liking that he was coming back again because they didn't do anything with Boo the entire damn show. So yeah, Austin, a lot the fans love doing that. You only don't like Super because it's new and you don't have nostalgia for it. Then you criticize Z and they shut up. I used to love the Boo arc when I was little, and now I just there's so much stuff in it that like I'm like, really? We had these fusions that don't do anything. We've got Super Saiyan 3 that doesn't do anything except stall. The the final major battle of the arc only uses two of the characters, even though the arc was supposed to be about Gohan apparently, and he's not even in the final battle at all. We can get into that on a later date though. But yeah, Cell's probably I'd say the like 17 had a big resurgence in popularity because of the Tournament of Power. I think out of the androids, he's probably the third most popular besides 17 and 18. Like it's really just 19 and 20 that get thrown to the back burner, especially 19 because he's just the pillberry doughboy. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say. They could have used Cell during both GT when he absorbed Goku briefly. They could have had a whole arc where the Z Fighters were trying to figure out how to take down this super powered Cell, who is now as strong as a Super Saiyan 4. And that could have been how Vegeta turned Super Saiyan 4 instead of having him transform right before the show ends. And for Super, they could have used him in the way I mentioned, which was because he used the Cell Junior at the Cell games. We know that he probably knew how to use that move before, so they could have written it to reveal that there was a Cell Junior he left somewhere on Earth before he died, and that Cell Junior uses the Dragon Balls and brings him back. Because again, it's in his character to train, and we could have said that he trained by using the Cell that move that that popping out the Cell Juniors before the tournament to perfect it, and then had the one that he popped out stay alive, and then that one brought him back or brings him back. Or they could always just make Android 21 canon and I guess have her bring him back as something like her evil side, bring him back as a an underling. Yeah, a lot of ways to potential. But again, they have a chance to correct it because the manga is still ongoing. I just don't think they will, unfortunately. But which really sucks because, like I said, he's a character that you can do a lot of stuff with between all the different abilities that he has from all the Z fighters, him wanting to train like them. Um, it's sad. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Next week I'll either do Boo or Frieza, maybe the androids. Have a good day.